they will emphasize the distinction of the jurisdictions as different nation states. When the prime ministers of Canada knows that president is a corporate construct and not a national construct. And this is very important for people to comprehend that. And this is back to, again, even the problem that we have among our people always talking about nation of this, nation of that, and then not teach nationality, and they have never been challenged. They have never been challenged. And it is a violation, a severe mental, social, and political violation against the people to talk about anything concerning nation, self-determination, etc., and not tell the truth about nationality. It is a horrible violation against the people. And of course, because that violation has been inculcated in society, you can see why many people are not even aware of how these things apply or don't apply, and that they never applied to them factually in the first place, and that they were allowed to be imposed upon them as application is part of the fraud. And of course, the people themselves must reclaim their estate. They must be willing. It's sort of like this. How would it be that anyone would be willing to defend the birthright of any man, woman, or woman who is not willing to stand up for their own birthright? And it be the obligation of another to stand in defense of someone who is unwilling to defend themselves, and that is a divine right, a divine obligation. And this is back to even like if people would, for those who have been taught some fundamental civics in a civic order, as such as say the Moorish Temple of Science, they would look in the Circle 7 Quran as an example, chapter 29, to get also a concept of the sovereignty of the people. Knows that's fundamental civic principle, and that applies to people in general. So don't look at it because it's coming from active or conscious Moors that it applies to us and doesn't apply to others. It applies to everyone. It is universal in its character.
There are a couple of questions asking your take on the fact that the Florida governor, DeSantis, just signed a bill into law about civics.
Well, I would look at DeSantis and look at the nature of, or what you would call, the momentum that has taken place since Donald J. Trump has been in office for the United States. That anyone that starts teaching civics is definitely being influenced by Donald Trump for the restoration of treaty and constitution enforcement relative to the republic, distinguished from the corporation operations, which it has a lot to do with the controversy that surrounds Donald Trump now.
I use his name so much.
That's a fact. But it is indeed necessary for the people. Because, of course, most of you who studied the works of Noble Drew Ali, known as Professor Drew, know that from the beginning he has been telling the people to enforce the Constitution. And that has been an integral part of the Moorish Divine and National movement. Of course, that's been breached by many too, which you also know. Which is also one of the reasons why we have been fortunate to even have a platform like this that Dr. Naila has maintained for all these years, whereas some of these things that has been suppressed in other platforms has been shared openly even though we're still, been restricted by virtue of censorship for the restoration of the republic. And so when you're talking about the restoration of the republic, you're talking about constitutional enforcement and treaty enforcement at the same time. You must know that relationship. And so if you see DeSantis and others talking about civics, guaranteed they're teaching, they're leaning toward teaching proper government and de jure government, distinguished from de facto.
This is on a different subject, but there were a couple of questions that were the same. I believe this is the same. There was an earlier question about all of the bodies. What was your take on all of the bodies being found in Canaan land? And then another question said, please speak on the massacre in Canada.
One question at a time.
No, I'm saying that the question about speaking on the massacre in Canada, I believe that it may be the same thing. You know that recently they found all the bodies of these indigenous or Aboriginal children.
Yes.
We're aware of that. The person wanted to know, the individual wanted to know if you were aware of that. And we are aware of that. But I don't know
aware before they published it.
Yeah, so.
The deal of it is the general public has not been aware of it on some degree and in denial of it on another level. It's not so much people haven't been aware of it. They've been in denial because they've been defending the corporations and the persons who they've been calling government, while deep inside fearing them, knowing that they were murderers. And what you would call little people sacrificers.
Yeah, we were told that melanated blood was very desirable to
absolutely because
so-called royals who would come over there and
exactly because of the energy and the melanin. They even used it for years to trying to artificially create or recreate the melanin or the spacesuit for the atmosphere of the solar system, known as melatonin. They've been murdering our people for centuries. And this is back to unum sanctum operations dum diversus, and our people being diverted into the fake race argument to divert them from what's really been going on for centuries. And that is cannibalism, little people sacrifice, stealing of their organs, and stealing of their crystal stream that you know as plasma.
And sexually, well, you can't say whatever they call that.
Well, you already know what it is.
The abuse. They've been abused.
And this is back to, like when you read the Christian Black Codes, where people have falsely been blaming Allah, Jesus, Muhammad, and Buddha for the organizations that they've been calling churches and mosques, etc., that they actually had nothing to do with, and that have actually been platforms for the actual opposite energy operators who've been calling themselves, and that still must be qualified if you want to say Satanists and Luciferians, because those words are misused too. And that will be a totally different conversation. But they have used the different even planetary energy designations that are ancient and corrupted them for their own personal use to do demonic things. So the best thing that you could call them, to be fair to Satan and devil type thing, would be simply demons.
Here's a question from Maquan White. Do you need to go through the MSTA to nationalize properly, or is there another way?
Now, I already sense the nature of the question coming from probably experiences that has been entertained by the question, and therefore the qualification. But I would say this: keep this in mind. Your Moorish birthright has nothing to do with any organization, entity whatsoever, for it is divine and it is natural. Any organization that attenuates any activity in relationship to it is a political act or platform by which, by the structure of organization, numerical organization, and principal construct through treaties and constitution is exercised, etc. But you are Moorish by blood, by birthright, not by any organizational structure. Don't confuse the two.
Noble Eighth Path says, Eightfold Path, nationality and naturalization, two different levels. I'm not sure if they want you
two different things.
Talk about them or just make
All right,
that as a statement.
nationalization. Let's make it simple for a novice or for a neophyte. Like, say right now, where we're located, in the private office of Dr. G. Most of you know her as Dr. G, and many of you share time with her with official hours with Dr. G.
Office hours.
So right now I'm speaking from one part, because she has more office area than much more than what you see, including downstairs and also upstairs. Now her son was here, and we were working together actually the other day, helping to clean up and do a few things that we're doing around here, rearranging things. In a principle of law, her son would be what you would call the native or the national. Myself or others who would help are welcomed, and we would be welcomed at the table even when she cooks and does her exotic cooking and stuff like that. However, our rights or would be privileges under naturalization. Her son's right would be under nationalization. That would be the distinction. When you apply that in the nature of the extended families that we know as nations all around the planet, when it comes to the actual people of the land, they would be the nationals or the true sovereign right claimants in that geographical, territorial jurisdiction, etc. And people who would come from other political jurisdictions, if they're in any social political agreement for stay or operations in that jurisdiction or territory, from a lawful perspective of documented operations, their position would be naturalization. So, as an example, if you or I left the Maghreb, Morocco, the most extreme west, North America, Morocco, and went to, say, Manchuria, what you call China, and we wanted to rightfully and lawfully make stay there for, say, education. We're going to be there for a few years for an education at some university, or to do some research, anthropological or otherwise. Then we and plan to have stay there for quite some time. We would become naturalized Chinese citizens. Chinese would not be the pedigree. Chinese would be the political jurisdiction under naturalization. But if national, you cannot be Chinese national unless you are Chinese by pedigree. You see the point? Likewise with Russia or any other political, jurisdictional, territorial nation state. So the principle between nationalization and naturalization would be nationalization would refer to the de jure people or citizens of a particular nation state, and that granted privilege temporary rights conditionally for what you would call an alien or foreigner entering into or doing business in another political jurisdiction. Such beings would be naturalized. And so the naturalization acts would deal with them taking allegiance to the enforcement and maintenance of treaties and constitutions according to that nation state. And this is why, because these practices have been violated by virtue of colonial operations in contemporary times, which is why they've been telling people falsely that a driver's license is an identification card and getting away with it. And this is also why, until recent years, because of the problems that they've created, you haven't seen people who have been allegedly representatives of different nation states, why you have not been hearing them talking about national identity cards. But because it's been corrupting the political economic platforms of nations around the world, you're hearing more and more people who claim to be government talking about national IDs. This is funny. But you never see them enforcing it, because the point of it is they're private corporations and people who have been pretending to be nationals when in fact they're not. Were not and are not. It's kind of caught in kind of a catch-22 situation for them.
Questions? Okay. So here's a question. Well, here, I'll do this one. This came up a couple times. Who is it that wants to know? Tarik wants to know, Brother Taj, are you familiar with the sister out of Georgia, Chief Janice, dealing with the land patents?
The land patents basically have been issued by hybrid Europeans among themselves to steal our land. And though that process in its principle should be correct, but the people of the land have what you call aboriginal claims superior to all of those instrumentalities. However, superior to the mortgages and deed claims is the land patent that is acknowledged.
Here's another question, and I had to pull up my poem because I feel like you can respond to it, but I also want to share this poem. Yeah. Reynard G. Hines says, so if it's a God, what is he or she waiting for? Or is God in us and we need to act?
Now, again, I'm glad that question was asked, because it's also part of the paradigm of the purging that must take place among humanity, because there's an assumption of the God position that is totally and has been totally incorrect. And that must be worked out. And so in the nature of the question, on the surface, the question is loaded, because the question truthfully has been a part of the mental mind control training that the people have received, thinking that God means the creator when it does not. God is a verb transitive that means to call upon, to invoke, and to pour out, and is not a being whatsoever, nor is it the creator. Although the word is loosely attached to the source or the creative sources, taken as one, etc., and has been generally accepted. And often we will use that word in implying the creative forces. However, it is an improper usage, unfortunately, but that's true too. And that must be worked out. And so therefore, by people assuming that it means the creator, often people would construct in their mind, how can God stand by and let all this BS go on? And how come he or she or it ain't doing their job? Because the assumption has been that the God is going to save us or rescue us, when the real deal, the rescue will be within. It's in you, i.e., that's the truth.
Can I share When We Gonna Be?
Yes.
As a response to that?
Yes. Okay,
so this is a poem I wrote 2016, July. It says, it's called When We Gonna Be, and hopefully this is also answering your question. Trying to figure out who we really want to be, but still fighting and settling for a false identity, that distorts and conceals our true nationality while trading places with the real enemy. Wake up, get up. When we're really going to see? Do you know why there's no ground on which to stand? Because we're looking for redemption, unaware we're on our land. They've got us focused on returning to one small patch of ground when throughout the universe can our presence be found. We're embracing his Tory while neglecting the glory of our ancient existence and deity. Truth is, living like thugs and paupers is the real tragedy. We protest and march blindly like lemmings off an edge, but can't find time to study for some real knowledge. Predictably programmed for social response and reaction, oblivious to the fact that we're being strategically distracted by the coordinated efforts of so-called deep state factions. Will our ignorance help their plan to depopulate the land so robotic AI becomes their newest slaves as we continually cry out to their mythos, what must I do to be saved? Or will we rise above their lies and reconnect with the Most High, who's not distant in the skies, but inside you, where true divinity resides? Time to call forth the divine spark of light that decided with determined might to journey 9 months to a distant world to take up residence in a baby boy or girl. See, I'm not trying to raise a stink, but I am trying to get you to think on a more critical level. You must know who is the real devil and not be fooled by what you're shown. The jig is up. Their cover is blown. This stuff ain't real. It's all a dream tied to an elaborate hocus pocus scheme to keep everyone ignorant and under subjection and the world in chaos in need of correction. See, they've never played fair. They play straight down the middle. And right now, most folks being played like a fiddle. So we must stop looking for help to come from a system that was designed to keep us trapped without wisdom. I know for a fact we are the answer we desire to see. So tell me, my people, when we gonna be? Ashe.
Ashe.
It is us.
See, this is the deal. We've been trained under animal husbandry for so many generations to look for some demigods to come and save us from forced servitude and foreign unum sanctum dum diversus colonial operations and occupations, that we forgot that whole paradigm of thinking was introduced to us, but was not in the nature of the philosophies or the religions of our forefathers, but actually is a total mind control social solace system that was introduced to us generationally and gradually, to the point that we confuse that with our Asiatic African ancestors' Coptic philosophies, of which it has no part.
Here's another question from Daniel Tavares. How wants to know how this connects to the warnings issued about the coming global life support system collapse and biowarfare.
Yes, what you're seeing is the doctrine of discovery, unum sanctum, inter caetera divinus operations actually being in fact and in reality countered for real on a global scale. That's what's going on. And so the dark priesthood that has been ruling the world, particularly since the fall of the Moors and the running of the Moors out of Iberia, and they will call it, one of the celebrations that they call it is St. Patrick's Day.
Tag.
And they also refer to it as Tag Day. And they also refer to it in the negative, with a negative connotation that is not properly comprehended or taught. They'll say they're running the snakes out of Ireland. And since then, they have been corrupting both the culture, the different terms. They are corrupting the true knowledge of the snakes and serpent, etc., misjudging deliberately all of that culture, distinguished from its relationship metaphorically to the operations of Kundalini, etc., and has used the corruption and the dark side of Babylonian magic for ruling the world, and have actually contaminated the whole world, and have people actually hating their own culture because it's being misrepresented by the hybrid Europeans, and also causing them to reject their own culture, not knowing the metaphorical and anthropomorphic different systems by which much of the culture has been promoted over the years, and therefore not being able to intelligently and rationally make the distinction between friend and enemy, friend or foe, truth and falsehood, which is what's really taking place on the planet today. However, because the people are beginning to think critically on all fronts and questioning all things, as should be, these things are in the process of working themselves out divinely. And like Noble Drawley always said, if I could just get you all thinking again, you'd save yourselves. And that is in process right now. And it's not limited to the Aboriginal Moors of North America. It is now operating on the planet at large, with all nations, all tribes, all political platforms. Not admitted by all, but that's what's taking place anyway. That's why I've reminded people, even though you're looking at logically and properly at all of these things from a metaphysical, cosmological horoscope on the geography of the planet, and also on the single units of the monads in their horoscopes, etc. I always remind people to also just in a more simplistic form, watch what Uranus is doing. That's not neglecting the issue of Saturn and the other planets, particularly ruling the Aquarian energies at this time. But just look at that, and then you look at the politics, and you'll see how the electrical charge is tearing up all of this stuff. And everything or anything that anyone claims to be, or any presentment that they make to the world in the manifest third degree and or third dimensional plane, that's coming from the nature of the energies of the priesthood from the Piscean era, is being dismantled and will not survive in the Aquarian light. And it's accentuated by Uranus. That's not a neglect of a refined analysis, cosmological, but I think that would help a lot of people who are not cosmologically astute yet.
Morsha America asks, do we send our suits to the corporate state courts?
You would, whenever there's a claim made, those are essential rebuttals, or what you call impropria persona established for the record status. Because remember, usually when the because remember, state courts are not constitutional courts, so they're not courts. They just simply are not. However, because they're operating under with de facto authority, this is another reason why you issue bills of return of attainder. And no, other than your cover sheet of your status correction, etc., is all is needed. Not all your paperwork. That's all. These writs, fundamentally on the surface, is all they need to know. It'd be correction of status. So there's no assumed in personam jurisdiction where it does not exist. So when the pre-assumed, because remember, the assumed jurisdictional in personam jurisdiction that are operative in most of the instrumentalities that's sent to you from them is with the assumptions of jurisdiction via the nom de guerre or the misclassification of the being in the first place. This is why it's only necessary to send even the cover of the status correction. All the other instrumentality is not even necessary because it's your business, not theirs. Their only business as being government or claiming to have authority of government, etc., in any capacity is enforcement of the Constitution and treaty. And if that's not presented to you, their position is fraudulent. They have no other service to you. Keep that in mind. And this is back to the problem also that many people have of expecting things from these people who are claiming government who are not government, never was. Government has no rights to give you or to afford you. Government has only duties and obligations via treaty and constitution. If you write that down and keep that in mind, you'll know how you're supposed to be talking to these beings.
Okay, Amin Bey asks, since the organic constitution has 7 articles and 10 amendments, does that mean everything after the 10th amendment is fraudulent, even if their dates were before the coup d'etat of 1871?
All things, see, this is the deal. All introductions to the Constitution for the United States that took place after 1781, etc., are de facto. That's fact.
Okay. Patrick Jean-Marie asked, how do we sue the state's attorney general for damages produced by the state of?
This is, again, constitutional and treaty, because keep in mind, treaty and constitutional enforcement is the platform. The platform by which all nation states deal with other nation states in international affairs is through a consular venue. Because the people have not been enforcing the Constitution as Drew Ali commanded them to do, Article 3, Section 2 would be indicative of the ministers and the consular positions and the ambassadors' positions of any particular nation state to deal with any controversy concerning peoples or properties in the enforcement of treaties. So that would be United States law of a general and permanent character in force, etc. Title 22, Title 22, yeah, Chapter 22, Section 141, 142, 143, etc. And this is essentially the fundamentals that I've talked about for the last 30 some odd years in lesson book 14A1, 14A, 14A1. 14A1 is the original text with all of the general footnotes, and 14, lesson book 14, is the general abridged copies that have been floating around with people for the last 25, 30 years or so. But essentially, the proper venue would be consular, and this is where people who claim to be government in any framework whatsoever, doesn't matter what club they belong to, what so-called religion they claim, this is universal principle. Your communication platform is from a consular venue with them, not with yourself, but with them.
Okay. Here's a question from Knee Relieve Chronicle. Dr. G, please ask Todd just how bad is the shadow government secret cloning of everyday citizens and replacement with nanobot controlled humans?
You can see what you're dealing with when you're talking about shadow government is essentially still Dom Diversus and Unum Sanctum operations. They're given a different name, but it's the same thing. Same entity, same persons by virtue of what is known as corporate, write this down, you all, corporate descendancy. And so the operations of the United States Corporation Company, i.e. often referred to as the corporations, etc., is really unum sanctum operations. That's the fact. Also known as the U.S. democracy. It is same unum sanctum operations. Also known as the U.S. without qualification. Because remember, the United States is a political metaphor that is used by many nation states. As an example, San Salvador is United States. Brazil is United States. Mexico is United States. But that's part of their political designation. But you notice that at North America, there's no national name. As an example, Mexico, North America, and South America. It's part of North America of the continent, right? And you'll see Estados Mexico. You'll see see Brazil, Estados Unidos do Brasil. So that's United States of Brazil. That's America. Brazil is America. But you see that Brazil is the nation state. Mexico is the nation state. You notice that the partnership with Canada, the United States, it doesn't have a national name. It's just a corporate designation. You see? And most people never pick that up. And many people who, particularly those who don't want their so-called members, club members to know civics, never point that out to them because they don't want you to recognize that you're operating under a fraudulent platform. Because many of them are, say, what you might say in partnership with some kickbacks in the background. One of the kickbacks is known as the 501c3 corporation or non-disclosure agreement not to rock the boat, called 501c3. And so they won't talk about things that we're talking about because they really never have been and aren't in the business of helping to liberate humanity or the people or help them in self-determination, but are in fact cleverly and surreptitiously aiding in their subjugation and getting a benefit for maintaining that dead status. This is why you'll see the corporate operatives will always promote any so-called organizations that run around calling people black Negroes and talk about it matters. Yeah, it matters for them to maintain the color law operations because no such people exist. However, there is a nom de guerre operations of people who are categorized under the Christian black codes that are stated as U.S. property on the stock market, 55 Water Street, where there's marriage certificates, birth certificates, and other instrumentality that actually fund the criminal operations of the U.S. corporation, members of the Roman Curia, who have been pretending for a couple, for over 100 years, pretending to be a nation state.
Habits for Life wants to know your thoughts on the mothership.
The mothership or ships? See,
the
is
mothership,
singular and affirmative. You see, but the deal of it is, let's get real.
Yes. Okay.
We've had an in-worlders and off-worlders dealing with us from time immemorial. There never was a time when that was not the case. Consciousness of it and qualifications of us doing what you would call rational communications with them on moral and ethical platforms has been interrupted for quite some time. And therefore, the people have not been as familiar as they should be with communications past and some that are present that are being held back from you at this particular time. But the position is there are many ships from many different star groups. So the mothership is kind of like
making this
not exactly supreme. Correct. It's like saying, it's sort of like saying the nation that we deal with rather than the nations that we deal with. That's a better way of looking at it.
Malik Day says, well, if the land according to Taj is Morocco, then wouldn't we be more hyphen Moroccans as the French is French Moroccans and Spain is Spanish Moroccans?
Sure, because Spanish is a word that's made up to hide Moorish history, and French is actually not hybrid European, but actually Central African. So, what's your point?
Well, I guess he's asking.
No, there's an assumption that French means hybrid European. That's what it is. And I just corrected it. It's African. It's Berber. And this is back to people, people not comprehending or the history of Iberia and thinking that as soon as you say you're talking about the hybrids. Nope, you're talking about Iberia. If you're talking about Spain, how about Al-Andalusia? This is again how the reconstruction of history has actually put our people into a state of what is called denial. And also, this is why psychiatrists often, when they refer to many of the Asiatics of North America, they have problems dealing with our people socially, economically, and politically, because it is known that most of our people exist in a state of what is known as disassociation. Write that down. So understand why they don't necessarily speak to you directly in your face about it. This is the view that most people that come from other nation states are already made aware of when having to deal with our people in North America, that these people suffer from disassociation, so don't seek to have a rational conversation with them. However, they will make you rich if you use fundamental international laws and establish business in their territories, because they have no knowledge of a state or right of a state, and they will make you wealthy.
J. Kane wants to know why you call Earth Midgard Earth.
Because that's the name of this particular Earth. It's not the only Earth. The fact that Earth simply means inhabited place. And the fact that the people have been not taught the truth about not only their Asiatic African history, they have not been taught the truth about this firmament that we know as the planet Earth. The planet Earth that we have known is a general statement given to Midgard, which is the name, the nomenclature for this particular Earth. Go into your older dictionaries prior to probably 1960 and go look up Midgard. It is the habitation of man.
Okay, it's another question. Dave's asking a lot of questions. If Noble Drew Ali derives his authority from the great Quran of Muhammad, why did he deposit our authority in a corporate deposit and not in a Moorish government?
You already understand and comprehend that Drew Ali established government. He established the civic organization known as the Moorish Holy Temple of Science. He adopted the affidavit, the religious affidavit in 1928, because the infiltration of the movement under COINTELPRO operations led by the FBI, and particularly metered under the J. Edgar Hoover administration, known as COINTELPRO. Although they only admit those operations in around 1966, they've always been operative and ran from the Circle Church in Chancery off Fleet Street, England, that has been operating all the judicial systems and operations at North America under color of law and under deception of the colonial operations of the United States, which is a colonial offshoot from Austria, belonging to the Popes of Rome and the Jesuit order and the Queen of England in their Trinity operations, which we'll see demonstrated with the flag that's flown at Washington, D.C., with the 3 stars and the 2 bars. There you go. Raleigh did what was necessary at the time for the preservation and the learning and the erudition of our people, and he made it very clear, know this to be the truth. The half has not been told. If I told you everything, you would go back to sleep. Study, and study well. And when you would have studied well and would ask me what to study next, I would reply, study yourselves. That's your answer.
Magneto TV says, looks like to me there will be another 1871 all over again.
That's what's going on right now. Except it's being reversed. It's absolutely what's going on right now. The same coup d'etat that took place against the Abraham Lincoln administration is the same coup d'etat that was executed against Donald Trump. Don't look at him as the single unit being. Look at him as a face to a principle. Don't get caught in personalities. Look at principle.
J. Kane asked, if I was forced to sell my house due to an increase in property taxes, is it possible to sue the tax collection authority?
Of course, the deal of it is, but now this is back, isn't this back to the bill of particulars that we're talking about now? Didn't we open up by letting you know that tax on private property is unlawful? So our addressing the issue of selling your estate when you don't want to do it, being forced, then that's a fraud, isn't it? So that's a criminal action, isn't it? And what if, and you know, this is where we've been leaning for quite some time, trying to get our people to a level of consciousness that they would redirect their energies that have been wasted for generations in different clubs and organizations that have not addressed the reality of the loss of their birthright. The real deal is that the people should be, in general, firing these people with official documents and also suing them in their private and alleged official capacity via international venue through consular venue, constitutional and treaty violations, etc., and thereby taking their power away from them. But you already know, because they're organized criminals and that the Circle Church and Chantry Crown members control the corporate state courts, that there is no due process in those courts. That's again why we've been telling people for decades to enforce the Constitution for the United States, which enforces the treaties. The venue is Article 3 courts. Read it and it becomes obvious to you that we ourselves have been violating ourselves by not approaching all of our matters with them relative to persons and property via a consular court venue. This is why they don't teach it. It's why they don't teach civics, because they don't want you to know that. And this is why a lot of Moors that have been less than honorable get upset when we mention Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution for the United States, because the venue for the communication of diversity of nationality is consular court. And that's a fact. Doesn't mean whether people like it or not, or whether they agree or not. That's the established law of the land.
Okay, this question is for me. Okay. From I Am Empress Europa L. I'd like Dr. G to speak on the old Pisces era with her having a pastoral background. I'm curious to know if she was exposed to this information at any point. Only at the point of my spontaneous awakening on December 18th, 2010, when I had my out-of-body experience. But up until that point, going through Bible college, getting the, all the way up to a doctorate degree, never. Twice. Yeah, I got, a bachelor's and a master's and a doctorate in theology. No, I was not exposed to this. I was given the dogma to teach other people the dogma, but the awakening came from outside of myself.
Give them a quick synopsis. No, they need to know
about this. It just,
tell a quick synopsis.
I was sitting in a prayer breakfast and I left my body sitting in a chair and missed the whole service. And when I came back into my body, everything was over. And I was given a mandate to reawaken minds, to stop lying. No, stop lying is what it, and tell the truth. And so the truth began when I said, okay, the truth began coming down to me in downloads and floods. And later on, several months later, I found information by, I think, Zachariah Stitchin and the other guy. And a lot of the stuff that had come to me in downloads was in their materials. But it came to me from as a download. So no, I did not get any of this information when I was actually pastoring. But what I attempted to do was to bring it to the congregation, and they rejected it heavily, called me a witch and some other things, tried to throw me out of the ministry that I started. But that ministry evolved into House of Reawakening Minds. And so that's why we're where we are now, 10 years later. That answers your question. Let me see. If there is another question. What? Okay. Habits for life. Why is it de facto corporation giving so much private paper notes to those who file taxes? I don't think it's for relief.
It's for dependency and to make themselves relevant because they're being made irrelevant. Keep in mind, those of you who have been keeping up with the House of Reawakening Minds for these last 11 years that we've been sharing through the Moore's Order of the Round Table, we told you years ago that the nations of the earth were going to stop dealing or trading with the United States corporation, and that they would stop buying U.S. Treasury bonds, and that it was only a matter of time that you would start having a feedback loop. If many of you have been with us at the House of Reawakening Minds for the last 11 years, you'll know that we've been telling people this for quite a few years. What you see is that taking place right now. So a lot of the political dynamics that you see taking place now is in fact what we told you what would happen already. So therefore, what you have is a rejection of trade. They're disguising it with viruses and everything else, but the reality is that they're not accepting the private commercial paper of the Circle Church and Chancery operators, also known as the Federal Reserve Board for the United States Corporation of Austria under the Secret Treaty of Verona, and they're not doing business with them. And therefore, I'm sure that many of you have noticed how lumber prices have gone up triple and sometimes quadruple, and that they've been jacking up the gas prices, and that they have been artificially restricting the service lines to the gas, etc., and figuring out more ways to rob and tax the people, because the fact of the matter is that their source of revenues is being choked off by the rest of the civilized world. Although they still have their shadow government criminal operations and military complex and pharmaceutical complex that they've been using against the people, which is being exposed more and more by themselves, by their blatant activities, etc. And so the economic problems that the people are suffering from is because their attachment to them. And the fact that they refuse to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, they're suffering the results of Caesar's works. And this is, again, back to the necessary fact for the people to declare their nationality and start declaring their lost estate. And again, part of it, and this is a small part of it, is what we're talking about now, which is the Bill of Particulars, in relationship to their bills of attainder that they've been issuing in the name of their taxing the nationals and the people of the land to save their defunct and bankrupt corporation that has been guised or imposed upon the world as a nation state, which it was not, is not, and never will be.
I'm just going to say, Lawrence Graywolf, I've already asked you to repost your question. I cannot see it. After a while, we can't go back. So I don't see your question. Please stop asking me to ask it. Just repost it. Thank you. Let me see. Kenneth Martin asks, should we have open lines of communication with our Sultan?
Now, this is the deal. Know the difference between empire and kingdom, and comprehend that the empire has been invaded. You're looking for superiority to yourself when it's actually you. This is back to us, the people of the North, getting organized and enforcing the existing law, because as you already know, most of the jurisdictions around the world have been compromised with puppets. It's not to degrade or disparage anyone, but to tell you the truth of the politics. This is why it's necessary to teach our people civics, because they keep looking outside of themselves for the cure, and the cure is with you. Furthermore, for those of you who may not comprehend what's going on in this Aquarian light and energy, the political platforms as you have known them are being dissolved anyway, and they're not going to function as they have. Most of these exercises that you're doing now, mentally and politically, are necessary for your development to actually jump you up into higher degrees of comprehension and of operations anyway, by necessity of us being stagnated for so many generations. And so many of the things that we have been aspiring to do for these past years as an exercise, understand and comprehend that they've only been exercises, but necessary exercises, but you're going to graduate far beyond that, both technologically and by what you would call ethereal spiritual development. However, these exercises are necessary for you to handle the radical, and I mean actual radical changes that you're experiencing and that are going to accelerate by the day. That's with all due respect to all people's positions.
Just trying to see if this individual rather reposted their question. I don't see. Just trying to find your questions. Oops. To the private side. What happened? Comments. They disappear after a while.
Yeah, I apologize. Explain them because they move so fast.
They move so fast and then they disappear. The earlier ones disappear. So that's why I can't, so we keep asking over and over. I can't ask what I can't see. I do apologize that I didn't see it. Someone says, yes, Taj, lumber, need relief. Lumber is quadruple. We know that.
But that's what we've been telling you all for years so that you can prepare yourselves.
Yeah, Patricia Sister Tia says, can you briefly address the Bay Islands millennials on right now regarding nationality? They have been academically oppressed by the suppression of their mother tongue, English, and miseducated in Spanish.
Now, keep in mind, there's no such language as Spanish. That's Moorish Latin. That belongs to you. And English is simply what you would call Gullah, Creole, trade language, and that's universal. So don't look at it as belonging just to the hybrids that deal with the international trade of Phoenicians, which is also yourselves. A lot of times we keep assuming or condemning things that actually belong to us by associating it only with the hybrid Europeans just because of the corruption that humanity has been experiencing this last 100 and so years, etc. However, understand the corruption has been on all sides, and it's not just the hybrid Europeans who have been corrupt. It is also many of the Moors who have been corrupt. And so these fundamental principles must be taught back to you in order for us to together, in many fronts, start fixing this corruption that all of us have participated in, some deliberately and some through mind control and miseducation. However, the results has been damage to humanity at large. Thus, the Moorish Divine and National Movement was established officially as a countermeasure to the Unum Sanctum operations. Doesn't mean that the people that are exercising this knowledge are more correct or more right than anyone else. It means there's a sincere platform effort to help in the uplifting of fallen humanity, and we have to pull each other's coattail constantly to keep us on the right path. I yield the floor.
Okay. Well, we said we were only gonna do. First of all, let us kind of give you a backstory as to why we started an hour late. We had a
massive electrical
we had an
shutout in the
area. Yeah, the electricity went out in the area, so we had to push it back so that we make sure it was back on by the time we could actually go on, because it doesn't let you go on if you're 10 minutes late on the system. So we pushed it back an hour. But Grand Chic has been working on my project, my home remodel project. I'm saying feverishly over the last, how long have you been here?
40, 45.
Yeah, he is tired, and rightfully so. So we're not going to go until 11:30. We hope you do understand. He does need to get some rest, because I can attest to the fact that he has been working feverishly. But we do appreciate, your overstanding and understanding and your patience with what we're doing. You know what I mean? And your support is greatly appreciated, and we appreciate you. I do have an announcement. Many of you have asked that are in, not even all of you that are domiciling close, but many are asking, when are we going to do, are you going to do live in-person meet and greet type sessions starting August 27th, which is the fourth Friday, and we're going to try to do it on every fourth Friday. So we're literally adding a third day, because we're still going to do our first and third Friday live streams, but on the fourth Fridays, we're also going to try to live stream it, but those are going to be, that's going to be our in-person, where you'll be able to literally come to the House of Reawakening Minds. So mark your calendar for Friday, August 27th, 2021, when we come back together. And those of you who've been, really, really anxious to get here and to be up close and personal with Grand Chic and even myself, please, by all means, put that on your calendar. The doors will open at 6:30 on the 27th, and we'll start the class or whatever Grand Chic decides to do at 7:30. And we hope that those of you who can attend will attend. We have limited space, so if you are planning to come from a distance, just kind of reach out and make sure, I'm going to try to keep tabs on the numbers, so that we don't try to pack, more than we can actually reasonably fit in the building. So we thank you so much for your patience, because it's been over a year, Grand Chic, since we've done an in-person class, and you've done. And so the 27th of August, we're coming back together. We're going to try to make it special, maybe have some, some vendors and some, vegan food and some other things there. But August 27th, meet us at House of Reawakening Minds, and we look forward to Vandiver Avenue.
Yes, and I want to thank many of the mothers and sisters and brothers who over these trying months and moons have been supporting the House of Reawakening Minds. And many of you, we can't thank you directly. In the future, we may just mention your first attributes, to keep it private, etc. But know that we appreciate you. And also, please subscribe to Dr. G's new YouTube channel, and it's Dr. G is official. And guess what? Because people been calling from all over the place, And we only need 179 more subscribers are needed in order for the channel to go live. So keep that in mind. So please subscribe. Please subscribe. Dr. G's new YouTube channel, Dr. G is official. Please subscribe. And I also thank you for aiding and supporting both economically and socially the House of Reawakening Minds. So please go to your YouTube and search for Dr. G is official and subscribe. And have a grand evening.
Thank you.
Government